This past weekend, Bill Maher did a segment where he said China is a country of very serious people. And we here in the U.S. are a very silly people, making a reference to Lawrence of Arabia, where he was basically saying that we are doomed because China is doing a whole lot of really awful things. And Americans are too busy having woke Olympics. Well, my friends, I need only tell you, you lost. I had a conversation with James Lindsay about this on Friday over at youtube.com/TimCastIRL, the IRL podcast. And he was, we were all fairly pessimistic that we may have already lost because what's happening is the woke cult, the critical race theorists and the manipulation in the fake media has created this narrative, this worldview, which is completely destructive to this country. It mostly makes no sense, and it is empowered and emboldened by massive corporations, advertisers, and in the end, the main person to benefit, the main group to benefit from all this is the Chinese Communist Party. To put it simply, as the U.S. crumbles within itself from infighting and nonsense and an inability to accurately tell people what's going on, you end up with China gaining the upper hand. The interesting thing about this is that China is very strict on controlling information, and we can see exactly why they do it. Now, don't let me prattle on too much about China. I want to show you where our weaknesses lie and just how bad it really is. My friends, there may be no coming back from this. In this article from the Daily Mail, President Biden, we demand justice. Breonna Taylor, activist, Tamika Mallory, addresses Joe during Lil Baby's police brutality set at the Grammys to say we don't need allies, we need accomplices, my friends. The set effectively glorified the riots. They recreated the scenes of the riots. They performed it. They did a mock fake version of the death of Rayshard Brooks. For those that aren't familiar, that's the guy in Atlanta who was drunk, fell asleep in a drive-thru. And when the police tried to arrest him, he attacked the cops, shot one of them with a taser, fled, and then fired the taser behind him before being shot and killed. It was not so clear cut. But in the video, they show a guy just complying and getting on the ground, and it's absolute propaganda. Now, what I think happens is that, you see, China knows the authoritarianism works. What they'll do is they'll arrest people for saying naughty things on the internet. You insult the police, they arrest you, they torture you. So people keep their mouths shut. But this also keeps many in China in darkness. And they'll just say, sure, fine, whatever. Many of them are just culturally accepting, saying, you know what, good. It means we're going to defeat the United States. Bill Maher pointed out, in the past couple decades, they've built 5 new cities from scratch. They built a skyscraper in 19 days, redid their entire highway in a month or whatever. And they've got 40,000 kilometers of high-speed rail. My friends, we lost. And this is why. The media in this country wants to use anger and rage to make money. The journalism in this country died a long time ago. And without actual journalism of people telling you what's really going on and why it's important and saying, here's what I think, y'all should care about, you end up with people being told to believe nonsense narratives to make them angry. And so they attack the wrong targets. It is, look, if you're an enemy of the United States, you're probably laughing right now. There are a lot of things to be mad about. There are many instances in which a police officer might take someone's life wrongly or even illegally commit an act of murder. Not every single one, though. And while I do think it's fair to say we need police reform, we have here the glorification of the riots. More importantly, Tamika Mallory. Do you know who she is? One of the founders of the Women's March, who was accused of extreme anti-Semitism. And I'm going to tell you this. The things she said will get me in trouble on YouTube. That's right. I am here trying to inform you about what's going on. The Grammys, mainstream performance, promoting false narratives and whipping people into a rage frenzy to attack themselves, their own communities. And if I show you what Tamika Mallory said, YouTube will probably strike this video. She made a bunch of anti-Semitic comments, according to the New York Times. And now they bring her up to the Grammys to talk to Joe Biden. Do you see who's winning? Let me read the story for you, and then I'll show you some of these photos. Black Lives Matter activist Tamika Mallory addressed Joe Biden during the Grammys, telling the president we don't need allies, we need accomplices. Do you read that? We need accomplices. While they show you pictures of violent terrorism, they ask for accomplices. Mallory, the co-founder of the Women's March, appeared on stage with rapper Lil Baby during his performance of The Bigger Picture. Surrounded by protesters holding hands, she said, "It's a state of emergency. It's been a hell of a year and a hell for over 400 years. My people, it's time we stand. It's time we demand the freedom that this land promises. President Biden, we demand justice, equity, policy, and everything else that freedom encompasses. And to accomplish this, we don't need allies, we need accomplices. It's bigger than black and white. This is not a trend. This is our plight until freedom. Lil Baby set recreated events seen across the U.S. in the summer during the Black Lives Matter protests, which saw protesters and police clash in violent scenes that sparked accusations of police brutality on one side and rioting on the other. They call them protests, but they were literally and objectively riots. I mean, even the performance has a mock version of a riot. It says, pictured, Lil Baby performing during the 63rd Annual Grammy Awards in ceremony at the Los Angeles Convention Center, March 14th. His set recreated scenes that were seen across the U.S. in the summer during the Black Lives Matter protests. They're asking for criminal accomplices. They're showing depictions of riots. They're showing it in a positive light. They're asking for more. And yet the media will only just say protests. So I guess, you can only assume what's coming. Now, I want to show you a little bit of this right here. This is a video called Lil Baby, the Bigger Picture. And you can see in it, the police walk up to a vehicle. The police pull out this man. They then walk. The guy puts his hands up or whatever. They argue a little bit. And then eventually the man is placed on the ground. And for the most part, in this video, he does resist a little. He complies. That's not what happened with Rayshard Brooks. And that's what they were talking about. They say outside a set made to look like a convenience store, the rapper performed his protest song, The Bigger Picture, which with the set featuring actor and activist Kendra Sampson in a scene referencing the 2020 police killing of Rayshard Brooks. His performance also included a scene of a black man getting shot by a police officer. At one point, the rapper stood in front of an officer with a riot shield and the convenience store burned behind him as he performed on top of a cop car. You see what they're recreating, and they're telling people to engage in. Listen, I believe that any person who dies at the hand of the police deserves justice. And you might even say, but those cops were scared. And I don't care. I don't care if they were scared. I don't care if there was no murderous intent. Accountability means accountability. If a police officer has a panic attack and shoots somebody, sorry, that's manslaughter. You drew a weapon on someone, you freaked out, and you injured them. Okay? It was a negligent behavior that resulted in death. Now, there's an argument over Chauvin in Minneapolis, because he was actually trained to restrain people by kneeling the way he did. That's in the Minneapolis police training. So the difference being when you draw your gun on someone and then panic, you took that action that could result in lethality. Whereas the training that Chauvin went through actually says, and this is published, that it's to prevent asphyxia. But there's an argument. I'm not saying he's innocent. I'm saying this one I think we'll see go to the courts and we'll see what we figure out. In this instance, they're promoting riots. They're showing something that was actually fairly clear cut. Let me break it down for you. The killing of Rayshard Brooks. You may remember if you followed my content, my YouTube channels, I cover this extensively. And they basically say, listen, at 11:23, Officer Rolfe told Brooks, all right, I think you've had too much to drink to be driving. Put your hands behind your back for me. He and Brosnan then moved behind Brooks to handcuff him. Brooks tried to break free. That's interesting because in the video, they show the guy just, get on his knees and lay on the ground. He tried to break free, and then he and the officers scuffled on the ground. During the struggle, Brosnan drew his taser, but Brooks wrestled it from his hand and fired it. Brosnan says the taser contacted him, and he struck his head on the pavement. Brooks stood up and punched Rolfe, who drew his own taser and fired both cartridges at Brooks with no effect. Brooks fled through the parking lot with Brosnan's taser still in his hand. While still running, Brooks glanced back half-turned and fired the second shot of Brosnan's taser, capable of 2 shots before being reloaded at Rolfe's head. According to prosecutors, Brooks and Rolfe were 18 feet apart when Rolfe dropped his taser, drew his handgun, and shot Brooks once in the mid-back and once in the buttocks. Prosecutors allege the third struck a nearby vehicle, narrowly missing its 3 occupants. According to prosecutors, disputed by Rolfe's attorney, Rolfe then said, I got him. 2 minutes after Brooks was shot, Rolfe appeared to unroll a bandage and place it on Brooks' torso. 7 minutes after Brooks was shot, an ambulance arrived and he was taken to the hospital, where he died following surgery. Brosnan was treated for a concussion. Tasers can be lethal. The police would do well to know that And often we hear about, police will drawing a taser, and many people say, oh, it was just a taser. No, tasers kill. There was a story about it was a teenage girl, and she was running from a cop. So he stopped and he fired the taser at her, but she was running. So the taser paralyzed her. She just went straight forward, smacked her head in the ground. I could be wrong about the story, but I think she died from that. I think going forward and then smacking her head killed her. Tasers can be lethal. In this instance, however, this guy was fighting them, drunk, dangerous, and he stole a taser, fled with it, and then tried firing at a cop. I'm not going to pretend like anything that happened here is a good thing, and I'm not going to defend anybody for any of their actions. I can certainly say maybe the dude was just drunk and you should have told him, pull over, buddy, pull over right here, take your keys out, or just start walking. I wonder why we don't have a police department that can literally just say that. I suppose the issue is if this guy's driving drunk and he does it again later and then someone gets killed, whose fault is that? You see, you can either defend one or the other depending on in which way your bias goes. So you have the people supporting Brooks. Sorry, they're outright lying about what happened. Now, I could certainly say, like I did, the cops could have said, come on, buddy, you're drunk. We're going to pull your car over. It's probably going to get towed, but you better start walking because you can't be driving. Instead, they move to arrest. They're supposed to. They're asked to do it. So, I don't know, make your call. The left is just going to say, well, they should have done the former. But then you have, the question of whether or not the cop should have even shot him simply because he had a taser. And I think the answer is this guy's violent. He's now got a weapon. He's fleeing. He may be dangerous. And if he does something, whose fault is that? Not to mention, like I said, tasers can kill. I wish it didn't happen, but these things happen. So it's tough. The bigger problem I see, the Grammys promoting this to a mainstream audience, showing these images of the guy being laid down as his cop is cuffing him. And that's just not what happened. It was not so easy. There was that story of that one guy. We talked about this with I think Clifton Duncan over on the IRL podcast, where it was this guy. I forgot his name. I think his last name was Scott. He's like very pathetically running from the cop because he's an old and kind of out of shape guy. And the cop just draws his weapon and shoots him. No joke. On video. Someone filmed it. That happened. That literally happened. Cop saw the guy walking away and he just pulls his gun and then shoots him for no reason. That should never have happened. That cop went to jail. And that's supposed to be what happens. Now, when cops have a clear-cut, case of murder and negligence and things like that, they do get arrested. No, I do think that we need sometimes activist pressure. So for sure, the problem is, well, the way I describe this is an autoimmune disorder, right? You have activists who have good intentions. They're trying to stop unjust police killings. Hey, man, I'm right there with you. I'm not a big fan of government authority or anything like that. I do think we need police. I'm not a staunch, hardcore libertarian on the bottom of the political compass. I'm the center left, more liberal type, which means I recognize the need for police, but I also think cops need to be, legally restrained in certain capacities, but they still need to be able to do their jobs. I think it was Brett Weinstein who said, for a society to function, police need to be able to arrest people. And so that means if they pull you over and think you're drunk, you're getting arrested. That's the crazy thing to me. In this video, they're trying to make it, they said it recreates police brutality. It's like the dude gets out of his car and the cops place him on the ground and cuff him. That's not brutality at all. Now, I suppose there's more to the video that they're not showing because they only released a small clip. This is why I bring up China. You have an accused by the New York Times and many others, anti-Semite, getting up on stage at the Grammys, calling on Joe Biden for equity policy. Equity policy is segregationism. They've already been doing it at colleges and it's getting worse. And that's why I say, look, y'all have lost. And I'll tell you this. Listen, many are probably saying, Tim, we're not watching the Grammys. Nobody watched it. The ratings are down for all these award shows. We're watching you. I know. But do you think the transition to honest media is going to happen fast enough to prevent what China's been doing in Hong Kong? It isn't. They did it. And I got to be honest, happened under Donald Trump's watch. What about Taiwan? You think if Trump couldn't stop them, that Joe Biden can? Sorry. Oil exploration in Africa and South America. Attempts at, they had once tried to build the Nicaraguan canal, which would have destroyed a massive aquifer and decimated the region. That project got canceled. There's a lot of things China's been working on. One of the largest infrastructure projects, as noted by Bill Maher. And the U.S. is doing what? Struggling to have any real meaningful conversations because we are split. Now, Bill Maher likes to jokingly say it's between the woke police and the people who think lizard people are taking over. Sure, it's a funny joke, but that's just not it. Bill, it's people like you and me and the people who watch your show and the people who watch this show who are critical of the woke police. The things you're saying about China are things that I said a month ago, 2 months ago, longer, when I started talking about Thucydides' trap and the risk we face as a divided nation. Bill, you're late to the party. And I think maybe it's because Bill relies too much on establishment media and he gets too much fake news poured down, into his ears. Here we are. I'm grateful that at least he's talking about this and pointing it out, that what do? At the Grammys, we rally around something less than half the country really cares about. Right now, according to Civics, it's a large polling, they find that support for Black Lives Matter is like, I don't know the exact number, but it's below 50%. Opposition is only around, I think, like 39%. And then people who are unsure and don't want to give an answer are like, double digits, 12 or 13 or so. Net support for Black Lives Matter has declined precipitously following the George Floyd riots. People did not like it. When I say we lost, what I mean is when the Grammys doesn't understand what people like and don't like, when the Grammys is pushing a propagandistic narrative that sows division and discord in this country and promotes the destruction of our own industries. I tell you this, man, Xi Jinping is probably laughing. And so is Vladimir Putin. They're probably having a good time. Iran, Venezuela, they love it. And maybe that's where we will end up. We will end up in a world where the U.S. just rips itself to shreds. There's been talk of secession, a lot of talk of secession. And many, we had like NBC News writing, it's time to take it seriously. NBC News wrote this. I covered it in a segment, that we need to start taking secession talk seriously because we've heard many people talk about peaceful divorce. I'm not a fan. I think China crushes us if that happens. But I think it needs to be pointed out. We are already divided. It almost feels like we are united in name only. The United States. You look at Joe Biden wanting to impose more COVID restrictions and nationwide, even though you have red states already opening up and you even have Maryland, a blue state, granted they have a Republican governor who announced businesses would be reopening. We are divided. We have no leadership. It's not Joe Biden. He's not leading this country. Joe Biden was the consolation prize. He was the last ditch effort of those who hated Donald Trump. But you know what? It's not like Trump is perfect, but it's not like Trump is the cause. I think Trump was a symptom of the problems we face. The establishment recoiled at the idea of an outsider populist winning and threw everything they could at him. And that means they started tearing this country to shreds. They thought it would be better that we rip this country apart than allow Donald Trump to do what he was doing. It's interesting, really. We had a great economy in 2019. Then COVID happened, and it was a bunch of Democrat governors who put sick people in nursing homes, shut everything down, and destroyed everything. Now, the country, it was even split in that capacity. It's the weirdest thing. I don't understand how you could be on these leftists. I can't see them as anything other than grifters, because when you look at my positions, you'll find inconsistency or maybe evolution of opinion. For instance, I'll say, I don't think we should be locking things down. I think we should have a surgical approach. And I don't think police should be killing people. And I don't think we should have 25,000 National Guard in D.C. What do we hear from the left? Oh, the riots from Antifa were defensible because they're fighting for justice. Oh, and also 25,000 armed troops in D.C. is acceptable because Trump supporters are bad. To put it fair, to be fair, it's really simple. Those people are just authoritarians. They believe they have a right to go and smash things up, and they say as much. Like Gravel Institute, hardcore authoritarians, proud and admitted. Well, they'll probably lie to you and say that they're not really authoritarians. But Gravel Institute tweeted they thought the tactics used in D.C. on the 6th were good. They just didn't like the people doing it. I think they were both bad. Whatever. That's authoritarianism, when you believe only you have the moral justification to use violence against your political opponents. These are the kinds of people we should never allow to take power. The problem? Those who believe in freedom and respect, we are giving these people the benefit of the doubt and allowing them to speak and propagandize and lie, cheat, and steal. Because there are certain boundaries. You're allowed free speech, even if you're stupid. And that means stupid people spread dangerous ideas. It's a fact. And that means it could be the far right or the far left. And those who believe in freedom recognize that and try to combat that. However, we have industry against us. The Grammys, whatever, they're using massive multinational power and authority to push a propaganda narrative. Their allies in big tech suppress those who challenge them. And this cult-like monoculture is being pushed on a people that really do not want it. In the end, it will result in violence, and indeed it already has. So what? We sit back, we tear ourselves apart, China takes over? I think that part already happened, and I think Bill Maher made that point. He was right. That's already happened. We've already lost. He said something like, you're not losing, you've already lost. And it's because of the division. Maybe it's pessimistic to say we've already lost because we are watching the decay of establishment media. We are seeing the Grammys garner lower and lower ratings. And maybe this was a desperate attempt to try and get ratings, not realizing that what's skyrocketing and growing are channels like mine. Moderate opinions, trying to be honest, telling everyone to chill the F out and focus on the real threats. I do not want to go to war with anybody. I had a good conversation with Cassandra Fairbanks about how war with China is going to be really bad. And even when I was saying, but they're running concentration camps, what do we do? She made a great point. A bunch of countries are committing atrocities. We don't invade all of them. And I'm like, it's a good point. So what do you do? It's a tough question. But I will tell you, as soon as they have the ability, China will crush the U.S. naval forces, Air Force, military, take over more and more space, building coal power plants. If you're on the left, just know that they violated their agreements on coal power plants and they're pumping out carbon emissions. Where are you at? If you're on the right, they're expanding their military presence in the South China Sea. But more importantly, if you're an American who cares about principle, both of those things should matter to you. They are defying their agreements with us. We said, don't build these things. They said, okay. And then they went and did it anyway. They're pressing on the South China Sea. We said, stop doing this. They said, shut up. And they did it anyway. They took Hong Kong. So they wouldn't. They did anyway. And they're going to take Taiwan. And we are going to sit back and we're going to be arguing about whether or not Mr. Potato Head is gendered or Dr. Seuss books are bigoted. I don't care. I don't care all that much about Dr. Seuss. I do care about the censorship. I care when eBay shuts down the private sale of things, and that shows you we're screwed. If we can't talk about this and call it out, we're in trouble. And I tell you, as soon as they get the ability to censor absolutely, it's done. I'll leave it there. Next segment's coming up at 1 p.m. on this channel. Thanks for hanging out, and I will see you all then.